I'm a student from Obafemi Awolowo University, and I'll be talking about building conversational bots with Python. Okay, before we get started, I would like to take a quick survey. So, is there anybody here who has not heard of bots before? You have no idea what bots mean? Anybody? Okay, awesome. It's safe to assume we all know about bots. Okay. So, do you have bot developers in the house? You've actually written a bot before and it's live? All right, awesome. Okay. So, yeah, so I would like to share a few details with us before we actually go into building bots. Some stuff that I think you might find interesting. Okay. All right. Okay, this was released last year by Google's Customer Marketing Insights. So apparently 25% of installed apps are never used. And I think we can all agree with this. We all have a lot of apps on our phone that we actually don't use. An average Android user uses like maybe 4 or 5 apps per week and doesn't do any other thing. Also, for an iPhone user, I think is about 5 apps per week. Okay, so so what's the implication of these statistics that we've seen? Okay, so okay, so the apps that actually make it to the home screen of the user tends to get used more. So as an app developer, the struggle is let the user like your app, so actually put it on the home screen so that they'll see it and they'll keep using it. Okay. So more statistics. So yesterday while we were having the conference, Facebook posted that they have actually reached 1.3 billion active monthly users on Messenger. 1.3 billion. I think earlier it was around 1 billion users like 3 months ago, and in like 3 months they have actually added over 300 million active users. So you can see the rate at which people are actually using Messenger more, messaging apps more. So, and of the 4 to 5 apps that I said earlier that people actually use, you realize that more people tend to use messaging apps, and then game apps are, games, messaging, entertainment apps. Those are what people actually use the most. So, what implications does this have for businesses that actually have apps and they want users to actually use their app? They are trying to push out their services to users. Okay. All right. So I would like to show this stat. Messenger. So currently, Messenger has over 100,000 active bots on it, and about 30,000 developers. Kik has just about 40,000 bots, and Telegram is a bit higher with around 60,000 active bots that people actually chat with daily. Okay. So with all these statistics, I'm trying to arrive at a point. I'm trying to let us see why should we actually go into building bots before we actually go into building bots. Okay, so okay, so Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, at the close of last year announced that bots are the new app. The guy noticed the trend before he could actually come out to say this. And okay, so if you look at this slide, you realize that we are in the 4th era of UIs now. Initially, it was OSs. So around the 90s, the OS was the platform, and then you would have to come up with desktop applications to install on your OS. Now, around the early 2000s, with the internet boom, it was more about websites. Everybody was building websites. You have to have a website to get your services out to users. Now, later, mobile phones came, and we realized that even now, I think around 60 to 70% of all internet traffic is done from your mobile phone and smartphones. So everybody started pushing apps to smartphones. You want to get your app on smartphones. But now, with the stats I've shown before, even while you still push your apps to smartphones, they are still getting used less and less. So now the current trend, if you look at it initially, when you're using OSs, it was desktop apps. Then you move to the internet, you build websites. Then we move to smartphones, we all have apps installed. Now, as technology is growing, the way humans relate with machine is getting more intimate. And the new trend in user interfaces is actually conversational. You want to get as immersive as possible, feel less like you are communicating directly with a machine and you are relating to humans. If you look at mobile apps, the way they are designed, you have buttons, you have forms, you have to click this, you submit this. It helps you get structured data fine, but it is not how humans communicate to each other. We communicate directly in a more immersive way. You talk to each other, you get responses. So this is what we are trying to achieve by actually going towards conversational bots. Okay. So and bots are not only helpful in messaging apps. We all have heard of general purpose artificial intelligence. In a few years from now, bots will be everywhere, basically. And why will bots be everywhere? Well, we are trying to make everything smart. Earlier last month, I think Twitter made an announcement about their car that now comes with AI, something similar to what you have in your Google Assistant or Siri and all of that. We already have smart homes and everything. The likes of Siri, Google Home, Echo, the Google Assistants. These are all personal assistants. And the way these personal assistants work is they are conversational in style. Instead of you having to go through steps and type something or whatever, you can type directly to them, or you can use your voice to actually get human input. They make it more natural. The whole sense is to make it feel less mechanic, so to say. Yeah, you are no longer, you're requiring less physical interaction directly, but something more immersive, something more natural, something we can flow with. So, and how does this relate to bots? Well, if you look at like your Google Home now, you have actions on Google. You can actually write bots and deploy them directly on Google Homes. I know Domino has one on Alexa already. So whenever you mention anything pizza, you can have them deliver it directly to you, basically. So you can build small bots for your businesses, conversational bots, and integrate it into larger, more general purpose assistants as the time comes. And believe it or not, these assistants are the future. They are coming. Okay. So before we now go into building bots, what is a bot anyway? So a bot is anything, or a chatbot in our case scenario, is something that simulates human level intelligence when you're actually chatting with it. Basically, when you chat with it, you want it to give you a response back, something that is logical. Once you're able to achieve human level intelligence in your response, then you have a chatbot. Okay, so I think these famous examples of chatbot, we have Poncho. How many people have used Poncho here before? It's pretty common on Messenger. Oh, okay. We've not. What about CNN? The CNN bot. Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, and then we have e-commerce bots as well. This is for Shopify. They also have a bot on Messenger, and it's not only Messenger. And if you think the time is not right or Nigeria is far behind, these are solutions that actually work only outside of the country. Well, we actually have bots that have been developed here in Nigeria and people are actually using as well. So how many people know of Kudi? Kudi? Yeah, thank you. So, right, so Kudi is a homegrown solution. It's a bot here that actually allows you to do payment. Basically, you can just chat. I can't remember the last time I've not used Kudi to transfer money. And it's free of charge. I only have to say like 2-3 things and I'm done. Type the name, I enter my PIN, and it's done. We have the Lightning bot as well. There was Facebook organized the Messenger bot challenge earlier in the year, and Lightning was one of the bots that actually won from Nigeria that qualified to the next round. And then Norman, this is something me and Leka and Goodness, a third guy, we are cooking up. So it's actually also a bot, but for a medical field, it helps you to keep track of your health and everything. So just watch out for it in the future. Okay. Building conversational agents. Okay. So I would like to give us a whole overview of how everything goes down. What exactly are you trying to build? Okay. So this is, if you look at this diagram, what is labeled the first part is how you're trying to get information from the user, and then the second part is where you do your processing, and then the third part is where you carry out your fulfillment. So basically, in the input parts, you can use voice, you can use, the user can type, they can use voice, anything to get the data down to your conversational engine. Your conversational engine, what it does is it accepts a response. It accepts an input from the user, maybe text or voice, and then it processes it. While doing the processing, sometimes you might have to connect with your database to get some up-to-date information on everything. And after processing all of that together, it gives you a valid response back out. So, now, right. So, don't make the mistake of thinking, okay, you have everything figured out, you just jump and say, let's start coding, let's try to build a bot. Before you actually build a bot, you have to understand precisely what the bot is going to do. If you're working for a company, you're building for a company, you want to have a list of services the bot is going to be offering, know exactly what you're building for before you start. And then another thing is, like I said, you have most of the popular messaging platforms already actually have support for bots in them, like Slack, like Messenger, like whatever you're using, and they have very good documentations. You want to sit down with the documentations and read through them thoroughly and understand what is possible and what is not yet. And as you see, your bot is going to be relying on maybe machine learning or AI and everything. You want to know the limits of what you can do yet and what you cannot do, so that you don't end up over-promising or trying to implement what you just can for now. Okay. So how do you set up your project? Well, okay. So basically there are two approaches or two models you can go about it. So when you are trying to get a response back to a user. So basically the user says something like, hi. If it says hi and you want to respond. Now, if you are using retrieval-based models, what this means is you actually have all the responses, valid responses stored somewhere, and you go through that and see, you try to make sense of what the user actually sent to you, and then based on what it checks through, it says, okay, something similar. If somebody says I is trying to get me, I'm going to get him back, you use that. Now, in your generative models, on the other hand, what you're actually doing is you don't have a list of answers yet. You generate them on the fly. Basically, you try and pass the words, the individual words of the sentence, try to understand what the user is trying to do, and then based on that, you give the valid response back. So this is one place where Python actually shines. Either approach you're trying to take, as you covered. Take, for example, if you want to use your retrieval-based model, there is the Chatbot model, the library. Has anybody here used Chatbot before? Chatbot, has anybody heard of Chatbot before? Okay, awesome. So what Chatbot does for you exactly is you already have a list of everything you want to say, basically sequences how you would respond to a particular answer. You have sequences of user input and valid responses for them, and it's already embedded with machine learning. So as you're speaking, or as it gets input from the user, it's going to go through this and give out a valid response back to the user. So, and if you're using your generative model as well, you can apply the natural language processing kits. There is another Python library that is available for you to actually understand. For you to be able to make sense of the sentence, and based on that, you can put together a valid response from scratch, and give the response back to the user. Okay. So what will the structure of your project look like? Well, you want to start by setting up a webbook. If you go through any of the documentations for most of the blog platforms, they require you to set up a webbook where your the messages coming from the platform would be able to go directly to your engine. So basically, you want to separate your project out into three things. You want to be able to handle the webbook. That deals with information coming directly from the platform you're building with. Take, for example, is on Facebook. You are building for Messenger. You have a Facebook page, and someone sends a message. So how do you reply back? So the way it works is when someone sends a message to your page, they have an action that is triggered, and they make a request back to your webbook. So you want to build a webbook to connect back to, and then your engine is where you actually do all the processing, basically. So after the user has sent a request and it's gotten to your webbook, and you are able to extract what the user wants to do, you pass it to your engine, and your engine does all the analysis. You can think of this like the normal way a computer works, basically, where you have your input, processor, and output. So the input part is what is coming from the user. The processor is your engine in this case scenario that actually does the understanding, and then the response handler just gives you the desired output back to the user. So another tip I would like to say here is initially when we were working on Norman, when we started out, it was we combined all three into a single app. So it was a single app, which is a very bad idea, because eventually you would have to start importing this and this and this and this. Eventually we have to separate them out microservices, so that everything we'll be able to handle them independently without having to have so much dependencies on each other. If you edit something somewhere, you don't have to end up editing three other things. So you want to separate all the three processes out into different things. Okay. So what should you do next? Okay. So let's say, for example, you want to build a bot, and your bot is supposed to help you sell cars, or let's say we want to build a bot for Python. Basically, you have to break your ideas down. Let's say you're supposed to sell tickets for Python, so you have to break the idea down into services. So one of the services would be something like e-commerce. You are buying tickets, so you have a ticket service. Now, it's a broad classification of what the user is trying to do. So your bot might be offering more than one service. So take, for example, like the bot I showed earlier, the Lighted bot. You can play a game on it. You might want to work on payment as well, buying recharge cards, and several other things. So stuff like that are different services on their own, and you have to understand, break the entire idea of what you want your bot to do into different services. And then once you're able to break them into services, okay, so I have a tip here on writing your services. Your service must be simple enough to describe in a simple sentence. Okay, so the first service is it sells airtime. Thank you. The next service is, okay, this just handles tickets. When someone wants to purchase a ticket, it does this. Okay, and it shouldn't be ambiguous. You don't want your services to overlap. This will help you when you're actually trying to build your classifiers, to try and understand what the user is trying to do. Okay. So now, after the level of actually breaking down the entire idea into services, you want to go a bit lower and use intent to actually get exactly what you want to do. Take, for example, it's an e-commerce bot, something like Konga, where they are selling phones, they are selling jewelry, they are selling a lot of things. Now, once you're able to classify the service, like, okay, this is not a complaint from the user or anything, it's trying to perform this particular service. So after you understand the service the user is trying to perform, then you go further down by using intent. The intent helps you to identify the intention of the user itself. So take, for example, you say you want to buy something. What exactly do you want to buy? Do you want to buy a car, or do you want to buy this, or do you want to buy that? So the intent, you can think of it like you have services, and then the intent further break the services down to make it easier for you to narrow in on what exactly user is trying to do, and be able to give the right answer back to the user. Okay, so the next step is for you to actually come up with classifiers to actually now get intent and services. So at this point, you already know the services, you already narrow them down using intents. So now you have to get valid data to train your classifier such that when a new message comes in to the the engine, is able to classify it correctly and get you the intention. Okay, it's an e-commerce service that the person wants. Okay, fine. You understand that it's an e-commerce. What exactly is its intention? And how to go about this is you actually have to go and look for a quality data set for your training, and then you have to learn from user interactions. When your bot fails this time, log it, have someone go over it later and try to understand what went wrong and what the person was trying to do. And you can actually have such data and use it to train your bot to actually get better. Okay, so the next thing is you extract your entities and parameters. After you have be able to classify the intentions of the user, you want to be able to extract out entities and parameters. If you say something like, I want to buy a car, fine, you already know it's an e-commerce service and the intention is to purchase a car. But what type of car is it do you want to buy? So the entities usually refer to nouns in the sentence, like names, like you want to buy an iPhone, which version of the iPhone, and stuff like that. So you want to use, you want to extract entities and parameters out. Okay, so the next thing is you build a webbook for your fulfillment. So if after building your bot and everything, you can have, take for example, you are building a bot to order pizza. The bot is not going to get up and go and make pizza and deliver it. Your service would have to your bot would have to communicate with some other service, maybe a desktop app or someone who would see the request and actually go to work and do it. So the webbook is actually for your fulfillment. Actually, after you have been able to identify that, you send that out. So after you have done all of this, so how do you actually go about it? You start very small and then iterate over. The first bot I built on Telegram was just an echo bot. Whatever you send it answers back to you. So based on that, you can start iterating over and start adding new features and make sure you don't break anything. So what are some of the challenges you might have? You can have scaling, handling big data, and getting quality data to train. That's actually quite important. Okay, so I want to end with this conclusion. So it's right for us to be skeptical about actually taking full advantages of bots, but at the same time, you might actually end up losing out if you don't take advantages of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you very much for the speech. I was really following it and I really enjoyed it. Now my question is, in English language, there are ambiguity in it. But if I say bi-weekly, it can actually mean 2 times in a week or every 2 weeks. Now, how can I structure my in a sense whereby it's going to understand? It's basically, the reason why I'm asking this question is I'm currently building a whereby you tap, you speak to the phone, it tells you, you make bank transactions with your phone. So with your voice rather. So how can I ensure when someone says something that actually has 2 different meanings, how can I find a way of going around it without asking the user what do you actually mean, but trying to get the contextual meaning of the statement? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think to actually get the contextual meaning right now is very hard. It's part of what if you look at what we have in machine learning and AI today, they actually, even the closest thing we have, the smartest ones, still don't understand words. They don't understand, if you give it a whole sentence, you can break it down and understand it based on words, but based on examples. So like, what you have to do in that case scenario is to go back and get clearer examples on that. It's like you're training your system to be able to identify a cat and a tiger, basically, or something close to that. So in that case scenario, if you are able to get more examples, more examples of each part of them, okay, so you might actually have to do it manually and label labels the data correctly on whether which of the 2 interpretations is actually the right one. But if once you're able to do that, you actually be able to get your classifier to be smarter and actually handle such case scenarios. But in some case scenarios where you can't actually do something like that, the Facebook but a project Facebook is working on, when you're faced with issues like that, they actually resort back to using humans, where you can leave the request back for humans to understand. The same thing for the London train bots. So they also, when they have something too difficult like that, and you see, but it was, if you, during the slide I mentioned about actually knowing the limitations of some things. If no matter how well you train your classifiers, there are still going to be case scenarios where you can't just tell out the differences. It's possible for you. You don't. The bot doesn't have to be right all the time. Something you can do to avoid such a scenario, and a lot of people actually do use, is for you. The bot should always be in control of the conversation, and how you can do that is, you take for example, if it's a Facebook bot, you can actually use quick replies, or if it's actions on Google, or what, you can do it on Telegram as well, where you have quick reply buttons. So instead of having the user actually go the extent of doing this, if you don't understand it, you can just say something like, okay, so are you sure you don't want to do this, or is it this you want to do? So in that case scenario, you'll be able to know which of it it wants to do. Add that, label it directly, and then use it to train the next time. Any other question?
Yeah. Okay. Please, what tools are, like, I'm interested in doing this stuff. So where do we start? Like, I've never built a bot before. Okay. So what tools are available? Like, the guidelines? Yeah.
Well, it depends on how deep you want to be. You want to go. There are actually bot building platforms like API.ai, Watson, and stuff that gives you one key integration. You don't even know how to. You don't need to know how to code to actually deploy a bot out on Facebook Messenger now. You can just go to something like API.ai, learn how it actually helps if you want to start out and you don't want to do the heavy weight of building your own classifiers and everything now. If you're using something like API.ai, they do the training and everything on their own. So, and once you're able to understand the whole idea and how everything works, you can now go ahead. Because the problem with using such platforms is the services you are trying to render is going to be unique to yourself. They don't train such platforms to do something unique. They train them to handle something general. So in that case scenario, it's not going to be perfectly suited for what you want to do. But for a start, you can use something like that. And as you grow on, you can now learn, dive into machine learning and handle responses on your own. But in the meantime, if you want to get started, you can use available tools like that. And like I said, you can check out Chatbots. Chatbots is a very good place to start as well.
Okay. Any more questions?
Hey, great talk. How do you go about gathering training data usually?
How do you go about
gathering training data? Do you have a methodology used for?
Sorry, I didn't get that. I didn't get you.
How do you go about getting your training data to train your bots?
Okay. Okay. That's a very nice question. It was part of the questions I asked Ope yesterday. Because while we were working on Norman, we were working on an health bot. For you to actually get, and we all know that people are actually very concerned about the privacy of their health data. Nobody is willing to actually release stuff like that out to you. So it was one of the issues we had, actually getting access to such data. So wherever you're using machine learning or anything, the problem of getting data will always be there, especially if you're trying to build homegrown solutions in Nigeria where the data just doesn't exist. You have to go around and manually get them, and where they exist, they are not in digitized format, so you have to go and first digitize them before you can actually use them to train anything. So, but in the real sense of it, if you check out, I think Stanford has a repository where they actually have most of all of these corpuses and things on different things, training sets, training data on different things you are trying to. I think e-commerce is very common. Normal chat where a small talk where you are not doing anything, you are just trying to keep the user entertained is also very common. Or you can check out, I don't know, Cargo or some other places where you can actually get data set